We must clear away the twisted web of lies in our schools and classrooms and teach our children the magnificent truth about our country. We want our sons and daughters to know that they are the citizens of the most exceptional nation in the history of the world.
All right, that was, of course, President Donald Trump announcing his goals for the 1776 Commission. So now that's, of course, an executive order from Donald Trump in order to restore what he calls patriotic education. So basically, nationalistic propaganda aimed at hiding the bad things America has done or has done in the past. And so, I tend to think about that as far as, hiding the past. I don't think that's a good idea. I think if a nation does not know its past, it's doomed to repeat it, which I can see a lot in America, where a lot of people do not know the history of this country. And so, yes, we're absolutely repeating it. But look, this commission, just kind of break it down simply, is a response to the repeated claims by conservatives that schools are too left-wing, that they're teaching like Marxist revisionist history. It's ridiculous, right? So, I mean, okay, did slavery not happen? Because conservatives love to compare everything to slavery, right? They love to compare wearing masks to slavery, which is absolutely ridiculous. That America did not have intense, periods of intense racism and hate. Well, I'm pretty sure they have. For example, Congress banned Chinese people from coming into America. Not just Donald Trump. Donald Trump's not the first American president to do that. No. In fact, back in the 1800s, Congress banned Chinese people after they helped build the railroads. Why? Because racism. Or what about crimes against indigenous Americans? For example, Andrew Jackson driving indigenous people further out west from their homes in what was described as a death march, referred to as the Trail of Tears. So we actually didn't learn a lot about that in school. At least I didn't. We actually spent a lot of time talking about how the American Revolution was amazing and awesome and wonderful. And so maybe I'm older, maybe because I'm older, education has gotten a little bit better. I don't know. In that case, wonderful. I'm glad that they're teaching about these things. Why? It's not to shit on America. It's because we want America to be better. In order to make America better, we've got to face our past, right? And so I want America to live up to our ideals, right? And again, the only way to do that is to have a very uncomfortable look at the terrible things this country has done and analyze them and say, okay, where did we go wrong? And how do we not do that again, right? That's important to look at the past. That's why it's important to see how and why things are the way they are today. The legacy of slavery, for example, Jim Crow, segregation, how that impacts the modern world. That's important to look at. And of course, it does have impacts. White people in this country, on average, have more wealth in this country than black people. It's a good example of this, right? Why? It's because we've had longer to build that wealth. We didn't have to, bounce back from being literal chattel slaves to other people, okay? We've had longer to build this wealth. And not only that, but we didn't have systems in place that prevented people from, acquiring wealth. And even though most of those systems are dismantled, not all of them, but many of them, well, it makes it really tough for black people to catch up. That's a good example of knowing the past and then dealing with the past to try to make a better future, right? That's why the history of this country is really important. And so, but that's what Donald Trump and the Republicans are trying to hide or play down. Again, we've seen examples of textbooks where they downplay the history of racism. They downplay just how brutal and horrific racism, slavery really was. Okay. And I understand that there's ways of teaching younger people about that. And the desire, I guess, to protect younger people from the harshness of the reality of it. But at the same time, these are things that people eventually really need to know if they're going to be informed about the state of the country and why things are the way that they are. And so, again, That's not what Donald Trump's doing. Donald Trump basically made this commission in order to rebuke the 1619 Project. Okay? And, of course, the reason conservatives hate it is pretty twofold. For one, again, it points out the history of American, or the legacy of American chattel slavery and how it impacts black people today. Direct rebuke of conservative racist, ideology and the narrative that the only thing that's bad about this is black culture. That's the reason why black people can't get ahead in this country. Or some people also hold the genetic argument, because the thinking goes, if it's a problem with black people, then we don't actually have to do anything to fix it because, well, they're just inherently flawed, right? If it's environmental, as the 1619 Project points out, well, then we actually have to do something about it in order to bring black people up to parity, which involves, in some way, some form, reparations, right? In order to bring people up to, like I said, up to parity. Now, I'm not saying like reparations as far as let's just dump a whole bunch of money on black people, right? That's not necessarily what reparations means. It can take form. It can take many different forms in ways that could actually benefit the black community far better. Things like investing in their education, investing in their communities, with better jobs, better careers, bringing up to pay parity, as black people make on average about 83 cents for every dollar a white man makes. And so there are issues like that we can actually do something about and fix to help bridge the gap. But also, it's going to take time after dismantling those systems to allow black people to start building up that wealth that we as white people tend to enjoy. On average, right? And I'm not saying that that's experience is true for every person. But like I said, if people do not know the history, then people are not going to be compelled to fix anything. And that is the goal, to make people ignorant of the history and, more importantly, blindly patriotic. And that's a problem. And that's exactly, by the way, what every nationalist authoritarian leader does. They do this blind patriotism. They erase history. They do political correctness. They project everything they do onto the opposition. And we have definitely seen that from Donald Trump. It's fascism 101. And of course, you have to target youth with the bullshit, right? Because, well, younger people are more impressionable. And so they did the same thing back in Nazi Germany. Look, if you don't get it, you're not paying attention, okay? His argument, by the way, is couched in, the left, they just want to protest against American citizens being murdered by police. And that's why they want to take down statues of people who, actually, rebelled against America, Confederate traitors. Look, again, it doesn't make any sense, right? Until you realize the whole point is to lie, distort, and whitewash the history of this country because it helps them both politically and economically. What this patriotic education is just political correctness by another name.